But I am excited for one reason of this.
Why?
Hello, winners. Welcome to the Wrong Button podcast, show where we talk all things nerds, most things video games, generally anything that tickles our fancy. And Tyler, I learned nothing. So we have to start at the beginning.
Oh, God. I can't believe you just made that joke.
But so, winners, when you guys are going like, hey, why did we get a podcast from you at 2 o'clock in the morning? There was a mic snafu on the original podcast. And so I messaged Tyler and almost became, help me, Ty Guidance, you're my only hope. But I didn't want to go that far yet.
Oh,
so
you should have.
We're here to talk about episode 5 of Ahsoka. Again, from the beginning.
From the beginning.
Which I feel like is apropos of everything that's going on.
Yeah, no, we're learning a lesson. General public, you should be definitely thankful that you didn't have me screaming at you, because that's what it would have sounded like. You know, like the old 2005 World of Warcraft, was it RuneScape clip? It's like the guy Leroy Jenkins.
That's
how
World of Warcraft. Leroy Jenkins. God damn it, Leroy.
Did he just go in? Yeah, so Ahsoka episode 5 was nothing short of brilliant. All the feelings, all of the emotions, all of the space whales that you could possibly want in this episode.
Save the squales.
Save the squales. Were present. Chris, what were your thoughts about this episode of Ahsoka?
So, we're gonna reverse it this time because I did that last time. So this episode of Ahsoka was, I use different words, but I almost want to say it to date. This is Dave Filoni's magnum opus. This was his love letter to being a Padawan to George Lucas. This was his love letter to everything he has ever touched Star Wars, from Clone Wars to Rebels. This was old Star Wars and new Star Wars coming together. And this was Dave Filoni definitely going, hey, George Lucas, thank you so much for trusting me. Especially after the 8-minute Master and Apprentice. This felt like, hey, look, I took something I made that started off as a cartoon and a kid's show. And this episode said, hey, it wasn't just a kid's show, but here you go. Here's your adult live action version of it. I'm going to give it to you. And he did, and he executed it brilliantly.
Anakin doesn't have a Padawan.
Anakin has a Padawan.
It's so funny. That clip sent me. Yeah, for everybody who hasn't seen it, Disney released an 8-minute short of behind the scenes of Ahsoka. And it really details George and Dave's journey together, along with how Ahsoka came to fruition, her place in the Clone Wars. Really cool. Only 8 minutes. Give it a watch because it was beautiful. I also just love seeing George Lucas in anything nowadays, because he doesn't have control over Star Wars. His prized possession. It's no longer his. So.
Yeah, it was his love child, and now it belongs to Disney. And Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are stoically guarding.
They're gatekeeping George Lucas, basically.
I would say they're gatekeeping Disney, but yeah,
fair.
Sure.
Other way, yeah, fair. Yeah, this episode of Ahsoka was phenomenal. Or you could nickname it Ahsoka's trauma dump on the general public, because we went through all of the feelings, all of the emotions, everything. I think it's best to start off with how the episode starts off. That Hera, Jace, they sat down on Cetos. Again, I don't know why you're letting your child go into a recently active battlefield, but hey, Hera,
it was a dueling ground.
Okay.
There was only 2 people.
Okay. All I'm saying is just it.
I guess that's after the battle this time.
Yeah, I guess if you think about it, that's what Cham did with Hera when Hera was growing up.
Yeah.
So okay, understandable. I'll let Hera parent Jace.
She also lets her child hang out with a known war criminal.
True.
We can talk about Hera all day and her.
Chopper is like the definition of a dirty sailor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he totally is.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
But I want to say 110%. His language has been different around Jace.
He has been
Like,
on
he's-
his best behavior. I did notice that.
Like Hera's like, you can tell him some stories, but I swear to God, if he picks up some language from you, like I will have you stripped for parts.
I wouldn't put it past her.
I want that episode.
I would love that episode. Just give me a Hera, Jace, and Chopper like side adventure. But no, they sat down on Cetos, right next to the lovely Night Sister. What would you even call it?
It felt like it was like almost like a cross between a monolith and a Stargate.
Yeah, perfect. It kind of reminded me of the stones, the standing stones from
Stonehenge.
Elder Scrolls,
That
or
too.
Stonehenge too.
That works.
Yeah,
That works.
like maybe a mini Stonehenge. And they sat down, and Hera's like, "Oh, looks like we missed the party." And of course you did. Like terribly late. And you knew you missed the party because a giant hyperspace ring flew through you in space. So I don't know why you didn't realize you missed the party, but you missed it pretty badly. And then they hear something behind one of the rocks, and it's our guy Huang. And I have never felt such sadness from a droid before, but he's just sitting there on the edge of the cliff with Ahsoka's Mandalorian helmet and
Sabine's
Sabine's Mandalorian helmet, and said, "I told them to stay together. They never listen." And he just looks so defeated and sad, and I just needed to give Huang a hug in that scene.
That was really because now it's been like 2 days, and like someone put on there like this is The Empire Strikes Back for Ahsoka. Like
100%.
Every episode after this to top it would have to be so extraordinarily good. And it's not like the episodes would be lesser after this episode, but it will. I'm going to equate it to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse versus Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The first movie, like my biggest issue with the second movie is the soundtrack. And it's not a bad soundtrack. It's a great soundtrack. It's not the soundtrack from the first movie.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel. Like there's such a high bar that for you to like even be registered on that scale is something of its own. So I think of this as like, no, I would watch this as Empire Strikes Back and say these two are equal.
And you can really see why Disney decided to do a limited release in the theaters just for this specific episode.
Yes.
Because right after that scene, it cuts. We get right to the meat and potatoes. Anakin and Ahsoka in the world between worlds. And, Anakin starts off with, some lovely humor because Ahsoka's like, "You look the same." And Anakin comes back with,
"You look old."
"Excuse me? What gave you the right, man?" Sheesh. I thought Hayden Christensen's portrayal of Anakin was a perfect blend between Revenge of the Sith Anakin, where Ahsoka would have known him best, and then also the Clone Wars version of Anakin too. I thought he blended the two characters together perfectly.
Seamless.
Yes.
In more ways than one.
Yeah, and also everybody had a huge conniption about the de-aging at the end of the last scene of the last episode. I thought it was brilliantly done in this episode. I thought it almost looked like a scene straight out of 2005. For all
shout out
intents
to
and
that deep
purposes.
fake guy. He's doing work.
That guy. He's putting in the hours.
He is.
And you called it, and this was one of many things that you've been calling throughout this entire series, which shout out to Chris. I mean, he should just take a victory lap at this point. This man, he doesn't miss.
The real reason we had to redo the episode so you could praise me more.
He just wants the praise again. He alluded to Anakin wanting to finish Ahsoka's training. And lo and behold, what does this version of Anakin want to do for Ahsoka?
We're here to finish your training.
Yes. Beautifully done, I might add. And, as he's saying, "I'm here to finish your training," like he pulls out his lightsaber and you're sitting there like, what the heck's about to happen? And it's either you live or you die.
Yes.
Or I guess also, in that same scene, Anakin's trying to jog Ahsoka's memory as to like what was going on too.
Yeah, because when she gets there, she goes, "I don't know what happened." He goes, "You lost," and she's like, "I don't remember. Trust me, you lost badly." And then she goes, "It was Balin," and he goes, "Oh, so you do remember?" So a lot of people are like, "Well, how did she get there?" She wasn't there. She wasn't there in the sense that she was in Rebels, because in Rebels,
She got pulled out of it from a portal. She was physically there.
she was physically there.
Yeah.
She died, and Anakin's like, "All right, kid, I'm in purgatory, and I'm going to keep you in purgatory because I'm the chosen one. We're going to finish your training." And he pulls out his lightsaber. It's funny you say that, because go back to Obi-Wan, the episode where Obi-Wan's like talking about how he's going to beat Anakin when he's trying to like get him to come down to the planet, and they show the lightsaber match. That felt like to me like, oh no, this is like, when I start thinking back on it, he's like, live or die, and pulls out the lightsaber. Well, Obi-Wan and Anakin before, he's like, this is why you're going to remain a Padawan. You're not going to be a Jedi, which I think is before Jedi Knight.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to be a Jedi. And when you learn how to master yourself, then you can become a Jedi. And that felt like the same thing here, where, yeah, he ignited it, but the only difference is he was more intense than Obi-Wan was.
Intense.
Intense.
Word of the day. Word of the episode. Yeah, perfectly said. And on my bingo cards of things to expect in an Ahsoka episode, I didn't expect for Anakin and Ahsoka to be crossing blades, but it was beautiful.
It was.
My entire childhood self who watched the prequels over and over and over again. I mean, I don't think I know of a trilogy that I've watched more than the prequel trilogy.
I would have watched the original, but that's because that was all that was around when I was growing up.
Yeah. Showing your age there.
I am.
But for me, the prequels were debuting during my lifetime. I was a kid when Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith came out. Revenge of the Sith was actually the first Star Wars movie that I saw in theaters. So seeing this and seeing Anakin twirling his blade, I was like, oh my god! I felt like I was a spectator in a wrestling match, just losing my mind.
I mean, and it was when he did his movements were flashy. They were Revenge of the Sith. They were the last season of the Clone Wars Anakin. It was flourishes.
Peak Anakin.
And Ahsoka, I felt more like episodes 4, 5, and 6, Luke and Vader, Obi-Wan. Like, her movements weren't the flash that we got from the Clone Wars or that she would have gotten from Anakin. They felt so much more reserved and different than Anakin's moves. So it was cool to see Anakin fight very, I'm going to say new, and watch Ahsoka fight how like we would have perceived fighting back in the day.
Yeah, perfectly said too. I also thought that in Anakin's movements, like you said, they were executed brilliantly. Word vomit there. With a level of brilliance. And I'm pretty sure you could transpose a lot of those moves to what he did in Revenge of the Sith. I think a lot of the moves were reminiscent of what he did against Dooku with his last fight before, head choppy. And yeah, just brilliantly done. And so, they're dueling, and it cuts back to Cetos, which, by the way, was featured a lot more in this episode than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were mainly going to get Anakin and Ahsoka, and then I was even thinking that maybe we would see like Balin and everything going on the hyperspace ring. We did not, but Carson lands, is talking to Hera like, "Hey, what are we gonna tell HQ about it? What are we gonna do about our unsanctioned, unauthorized mission that we have absolutely nothing to show for, by the way.
That we're definitely not on.
Yeah. That we're not going to get court-martialed for." And, so Hera's just like, I'll pull rank. Like, what's a good rank if you can't use it? Fair. But all the while, you see Jace, and he's, like, staring off into the ocean. Again, not featured on my bingo card was Jace being instrumental to the story here. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. He's just like his father. But he's staring off into the ocean and he's trying to get Hera's attention. He's like, Mom, do you hear that? And like you hear the waves crashing, and Hera's like, okay, kid, like I'll play ball. Like, what are you hearing? And he's like, the lightsabers clashing. Like, do you hear it? And I think, first of all, incredible. The fact that he can hear that, insane. I think that really speaks to Cetos's point as like a Force hotspot kind of world, kind of like how the temple was on Lothal.
Yeah, the Zepho homeworld, like where
Yeah.
each one, everything. There are planets that just, for whatever reason, are just ripe with the Force.
Yeah, Dagobah too.
Dagobah, yeah.
I mean, why else would Yoda go to Dagobah? Because it was pretty it was pretty hopping.
It was.
Well,
There was a lot of frogs there.
Yeah,
Grogu would have been happier there.
He would have been. Oh no! You don't think Yoda
ate the frogs? How do you think?
Oh no!
Oh, where did I take you?
Oh, that's sad. I guess it. I'm so. Wow. I didn't make that connection from the Mandalorian until now. When Grogu's like swiping that frog lady's eggs.
Oh yeah.
And I just never made the connection that Yoda lived in a swamp for the rest of his life. And what do you think he was eating there? Of course he was.
Frog lady eggs.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Brutal murder.
Some grandmaster you are, Yoda. Anyway.
Sweet brutal murder.
And so they were cutting between Cetos and the world between worlds beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And as Anakin and Ahsoka are fighting, Ahsoka manages to get a nice ripe kick on him, and comes back with the very standard Padawan shit talking. Pardon my French. And he's like, looks like you don't have much left to teach me." And then Anakin is like, "I haven't shown you everything yet," and then slices the bridge.
The ethereal bridge.
Yeah.
Like going to heaven and being like, "Oh, I'm gonna sword fight, Jesus up here." And Jesus is like, "You did well, mortal." And it's like, cut the Nimbus cloud underneath Jesus and he falls. And
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
And I sat there for a second in shock too. I was like, I did not expect Anakin to cut the bridge. What is on the bottom? You're in space. Where is this going? And Ahsoka's falling and falling, and she falls into this smoke. It's red and purple. It's incredibly smoky.
Yes.
It's like a bar in the 80s. That's how smoky we're talking about.
Oh,
Like
yeah, it
biker
was.
gangs, everything. And you see Ahsoka get up, and the proportions.
So before we get to the proportion, because the perspective was a brilliant perspective. You're right. So when she falls and she hits there, you're like, did you literally just cut the bridge out and like, because you're in purgatory middle, you sent her to hell? And to a point, yes. But you said it last night, you're good like 30 to 40 feet back.
Yes.
And the camera's pulled out at a wide angle shot. And Ahsoka gets up and you're like, okay, Rosario Dawson, she's getting up and dusting herself off. And then you're right, you get a little bit closer and you're like, this isn't Rosario Dawson.
It's a young Ahsoka. And then out of nowhere behind her, a clone trooper comes out of the fog, and it all dawns on you. It clicks. I had goosebumps during this because we're all realizing, as young Ahsoka is also realizing, that Anakin has sent her to the Clone Wars. And lo and behold, Anakin comes behind her in his Clone Wars armor that looks brilliant.
Great, fantastic
Beautiful,
recreation.
amazing, yes, for live action. And, she says, this is the Clone Wars. And follows it up with, Anakin follows it up with,
Yeah.
of course it is.
Yeah. Or yeah, it is.
Yeah. And Ahsoka's like, what are we doing here? This is one of my first missions. And Anakin's like, you tell me. Which, if your master's telling you that, you're in for a long journey in Star Wars for the lesson. It's gonna take you some places, and took it. It did. And I loved this scene too, just because in the back you had the walkers, You had the gunships. You had clones everywhere. There's lasers flying.
501st is doing work. Way to go again, guys.
They're in their phase 2 armor, by the way.
Yeah, way to carry the Star Wars legacy. Like, who's putting in the real work there? Like, yeah, Dave Filoni, you're writing your good little stories, but let's talk about the guys who you hire because they make better armor that you can procure from Disney.
And yeah, so Anakin's charging forward, and Ahsoka's sitting here like, away from me. Ignites her green lightsabers. Yeah. That entire transition, one of many transitions that has been incredible in the show.
This entire episode, you're right, 100% right.
Yeah, I mean, and it was at the end of last episode too when we got introduced to the world between worlds, like the transition from the waves to the ethereal bridge, and Ahsoka waking up, and then Anakin's there. That was beautifully done. But you're right, this episode blew that one out of the water for many reasons. And as Ahsoka is going through this, we are introduced into another scene where it's after the battle. You have clones who were injured, a lot of them on gurneys, lots of groans, exactly how you would see the aftermath of a battle of that scale. And, war is hell.
War is hell.
And sure, you hear about the glory, the fighting, the heroics all the time, but nobody ever likes to talk about the carnage, the bloodshed, what comes after it. And we see Ahsoka really grieving here. And I thought it beautifully portrayed the conflicting emotions that Ahsoka has about being a Jedi. And what did you think about Anakin in that scene? Also, the fact that he was talking to Captain Rex.
Oh yeah, the fact that Rex is just chilling here, yeah,
in the background.
So Anakin comes up to Ahsoka because Ahsoka's grieving. Goes, "Hey, Snips, come on! There are more droids coming. We have to go head them off. We got to charge. There's still job's not done. We still have something that we have to do.
Job's
here.
Not finished."
And Ahsoka sits there and goes, and she actually, it might have been the scene before where she goes like, we're peacekeepers. Like I wasn't trained for this. And Anakin sits there and goes, yeah, like when I was being brought up and trained, like we were keepers of the peace. Obi-Wan trained me to be a peacekeeper, but we're at war now, and I need you to be a soldier because we're not a galaxy at peace where you're just going to help maintain that. Now we need to get, back to peace. And we'll touch on it later, but I love Anakin. He makes a snarky comment. And I can't remember exactly what the comment was. She's like, Ahsoka goes, well, this I'll be allowed to train my Padawan is war. And Ahsoka goes, Anakin goes, well, do you even want a Padawan? Like, yeah. Do you really want to be a teacher? Like, it's a lot of work. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Are you sure about that?
And Ahsoka sits there and goes, are you joking at a time like this? And he's like, yeah, it was a joke. And he's like, what do you want from me? What do you need from me? Like, it was a very... Because we also have to remember, this is a young Anakin that we're seeing who isn't a teacher. And
No, not at all.
One of the great lessons, and this is going to go back to my martial arts roots that I love to talk about, is you become a master when you teach someone how to be a master. It's cool to be able to go out and be like, yeah, I can punch through cinder blocks all day. But you know how you really master it? When you get the person next to you and you go, hey, this is what you do. This is how you focus. This is how you fire. This is what it feels like. And then you watch them do it and succeed like you have. Because in doing that, if they're replicating you, you're going to see your own faults and your own flaws. So we got to see this young Anakin who's not a teacher ask his Padawan. Padawan's frustrated with the answer, so he sits there and goes, well, we're going to be more serious. You can stay here, and if you don't want to fight, you're just going to die. And it goes back to, like, it harkens back to, like, live or die. And Anakin's just like, all right, here we go again. Fight or die. And I thought it was a great scene, especially because we've seen this episode. Like, the battle that they have, we can go find... I can go pull it up on Disney Plus right now, and you and I could find that episode and watch it. And most of the conversations felt the same from that episode.
It did, yeah. And I think that's where Dave Filoni did a beautiful job bridging the hardcore Star Wars fans who've seen the animation, read the books, done all the live action, everything, with the more casual Star Wars fan. You know, those who have probably seen all of the live action stuff. Definitely The Mandalorian, because it's the hottest Star Wars show right now. Definitely the movies, but maybe not something like
Andor.
Yeah, maybe not Andor, definitely not the animation. They haven't caught up on it. So I thought they did a beautiful job portraying what their dynamic was like in the Clone Wars through these scenes. And then one of the coolest transitions come out of this scene, because as you hear, you start to hear clones shouting in the distance, blasters are going off again, and Anakin gathers the men, gathers Rex, gathers. I think they were Twi'leks in the background. Were they not?
There were some Twi'leks. It felt like it might have been a Ryloth, but
yeah, like during the Ryloth campaign.
It's either Ryloth or Geonosis.
Yeah,
is I feel like what this would have been about.
Yeah, definitely. And he ignites his saber. Also, the way Hayden Christensen ignites his saber when he's going like into battle is both beautiful and so cocky. He has it off to the side and he's just walking like that. Like, a blaster could come right for his face. He's just unfazed.
He does the whole anime. Like,
he is so
anime. He just flicks it out down here. Yep. It's like, that's not a stance. You can't react fast enough.
No.
I can.
Chosen one.
Yeah, chosen one. You see this armor? Oh, it looks different. Plot armor.
Massive plot armor. And as they're starting this charge comes the most beautifully done, best transition I've ever seen. Anakin's saber goes red. And it shows that the path that he's going down is what ultimately leads to his fall. Which I can only think about how Ahsoka felt in that moment, seeing Anakin's future, I guess, laid out right there, and seeing like the warning signs. Because I'm willing to bet, of course, when she was growing up and going through all of this, the warning signs weren't there for her because she was, she was his right-hand man through all of this.
There's a fun saying, when you look back at the past, at the red flags of the past with rose-colored glasses, they just look like flags. So it's very much so. That's exactly what it was referencing.
Yeah.
No, it was great. And the flashbacks and thunder, and then you see the silhouette of Vader.
Yep.
And it's like, because we know that this is where
this path is leading for him.
And we know that Ahsoka knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be one of the key takeaways here is like, Ahsoka knows, like, I know where this story ends.
Yeah, if I continue down this path with him, is that all I'm going to become?
Mm-hmm.
And then it kicks out to the Siege of Mandalore. And, you see Ahsoka going absolutely ham, cutting down these Mandalorians with who are followers of Darth Maul, Death Watch. And you see the clone troopers in the background with their helmets painted like Ahsoka because it's directly out of Season 8.
Yes.
And then you see Rex again with her, talking about securing the perimeter. And Ahsoka doesn't join them. And behind her comes Anakin, who is at that point a spitting image of how he was in Revenge of the Sith.
Yes. Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened.
And, he's coming behind and he was like, oh, I don't know this battle. Yeah, it's because you weren't there. You were doing...
We'd already parted ways at that time.
Yeah. I think right around that moment, he was cutting off Count Dooku's head. Somewhere right in that neighborhood. Or maybe the Siege of Mandalore happened directly after he cut off Count Dooku's head. But in any case, Count Dooku's head off his body. So the Siege of Mandalore was concurrent with the Battle of Coruscant. That's where Anakin and Obi-Wan raced off to in the last season of the Clone Wars.
It is. Sorry, I'm sitting here going like, all right, when exactly? Because you get a pretty good tell of when it happened and when Order 66 happened. But I don't think...
Yeah, they had a they had a holo meeting because Ahsoka had to chime in with the Jedi Council, and it was right after Anakin got off that transmission.
Yeah.
Because why am I blanking on it? Mace Windu? There we go. Drops the "This business doesn't concern you, citizen" line.
Oh God.
Yeah. So because Dave did a great job. For those of you who haven't watched the Clone Wars last season for some reason, go watch it. It's beautiful.
Even if that's the only season of it.
Yeah, it'll make you cry a little bit. But it takes place during Revenge of the Sith, and it's cut beautifully to show you exactly when the moments are happening. But I was really excited, and I wouldn't say let down when it didn't happen, but I almost thought that we were going to see Darth Maul in this scene when Ahsoka's on Mandalore, because in the Clone Wars, Ahsoka confronts Darth Maul and then beats him straight up in a one-on-one duel. Beats Darth Maul, pretty freaking insane.
It's handed. Yeah. It's almost a handed fight.
It was beautifully done, and did not get to see that. I like that we got more Anakin in that scene. We didn't get any Darth Maul, but it was rumored that Darth Maul was cast in Ahsoka and then cut. Like that was the rumor all throughout like pre-production and when they were doing shooting, is that Darth Maul was going to make an appearance in Ahsoka. And I can understand why he didn't end up making that appearance, because then you would have to explain, how did Maul get back, and I thought he got chopped in half on Naboo. How has he been alive all this time? Because the only other mainstream media that Darth Maul shows up in that's not animated is at the very end of Solo. And I know a lot of people had questions about that because they hadn't seen the Clone Wars or Rebels, where Darth Maul is featured prominently, which also blew my mind in the original run of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Darth Maul coming back. I was like, how the heck did he... That man was chopped in half.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, it wasn't a gut shot; it was at the waist.
Yes,
and you just took off the waist.
It wasn't a gut shot.
That's what they did. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Somewhere on his couch in his apartment, Qui-Gon Jinn is just punching the air right now. Sorry, buddy. Most important Jedi that could have avoided all of this.
It probably
only want to die from a gut shot.
It probably was a good 15 to 20 minutes after Qui-Gon got stabbed that Maul was cut in half. So Qui-Gon was already dead, and when Maul was falling, Bacta was already ready. Fell into the first thing of Bacta, created right there on Naboo.
Yep, right there. Threw the first batch out, didn't think they needed it. I was already moving on to improve it. But no, and yeah, so, Anakin's back there, and he's like, I don't know this battle. Yeah, of course, because you were chopping off Count Dooku's head somewhere around this time period. And Ahsoka's giving him the rundown that this is the Siege of Mandalore. We'd already parted ways by then.
It feels intense. It was.
A little bit. And I'm blanking on the line that Ahsoka, gives Anakin. Like, their confrontation in this scene was very important.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm blanking on exactly what was said between Ahsoka and Anakin, but essentially it goes, he's trying to get Ahsoka to learn this lesson. And Ahsoka,
a part of you is everything that I am.
Oh yeah, the wisdom.
It's everything that I am. Well, my master taught me, his master taught him, and his master's master taught him. Like going literally Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Dooku. And he goes, you are all of that. You are part of a legacy.
Yes.
And she kind of goes, a legacy of what? All I've done is war.
Yeah, it's just a death and destruction. And that kind of POs Anakin, because he's like, you're more than that because I'm more than that. And Ahsoka's like, you are, Anakin. And then she drops the line of, but you're far more powerful and dangerous than any of us ever realized. And that ticked him off a little bit.
And I love the line. All right, so we're still on that. And it was that line of, because I went into it last night. Like, the lessons, and I'm not going to ask you what was your initial thought on the lesson of what?
Oh, I'm not going through this again.
Am I just doing mine?
Of course, you're doing yours.
Okay. So
for the record, by the way, it was another case of Chris dunking on me last night that I'm not going to stand for. That's why I corrupted the audio in the first place. It was all me.
It's so the key thing here is we're going back to Master and Apprentice, and Anakin says, "Well, I need to finish your training," and we get the kind of herald back. Hey, did you watch Kenobi? What kind of what kind of training are we doing? And that was a fight. That was also a lesson. A lot of fights come that way, and I said that there are like 4 major takeaway lessons here for you. The first one is it's never the student who fails. It is the teacher who fails the student. You didn't motivate. You didn't like. There's always something, unless that student like walks away from you, and you've tried everything you can, but they physically start walking away from you.
It's on you.
It is your failure for maybe not protecting, not explaining them, and you can always be like, the student didn't want to learn. Like, no, you didn't. The second that you said, you know what, I'm done, is the second that you failed. Because if you'd have been like, okay, he needs to walk away and think about this and come back, fine. He will my doors will always be open to him, and I will help him the best I can. And so we've got Ahsoka and Anakin. Like, Ahsoka walked away before Anakin could teach this. So because of that, Anakin failed because he didn't ever really try to go after Ahsoka. He just kind of let it happen. And then when she did come back into his life, he was happy to have her there, but you could just tell that there was one reach out of the way.
Yep.
So it was more of his failure there. So we have the failure of Ahsoka. The second one is you tailor how you're teaching
to your student.
To your student.
Always.
And Ahsoka comes in and she says it. I'm a peacekeeper. I'm a peacekeeper. This is what I was trained for. And Obi-Wan's like, yes. Or I'm sorry, Anakin's like, yes, you're right. I need to train you to be a soldier. And what makes that so poignant is we have Ahsoka trying to train Sabine to be a Jedi warrior. No, Sabine doesn't need to be a Jedi warrior.
No.
Sabine is a warrior. Let her fight like a Mandalorian. Teach her how to be a Jedi. Teach her how to be calm and centered with the Force.
And teach her how to keep the peace.
Teach her to be a peacekeeper. Because then she's going to take that and she's going to be like, but I can do all these things as a Mandalorian. What if? And she will discover in her own.
And also, it was prominently displayed that Ahsoka never tailored her teachings to Sabine. And it was only when she did that where you started to see genuine progress between the two during the space battle between between Shin, Merrick, and Ahsoka and Sabine and Huyang.
Random jobbers.
Yeah. So that's where you really started to see Ahsoka learn that, hey, if we're gonna get out of this alive, I have to like bend to Sabine here because whatever I'm trying to do isn't working. So
what do you need? And it was great. We got heralded back to that. That was an Act 2 thing. Show up here in Act 3.
Yeah, beautifully done.
You're right. Like everything. Like you cannot say that enough.
Because I can't. No, I'm a broken record. Exquisitely done.
Exquisitely done. And yeah,
fabulous, fantastic.
I'm gonna take your words. Masterclass.
It was a masterclass. It was a Filoni masterclass for sure. But yeah, so that it pisses off Anakin because he's intense.
He is intense.
Anakin is, as a certain 25,000-year-old droid would later put it, and as you said, it's back to the beginning. You've learned nothing. And then you can see Anakin start to turn and, gives Ahsoka, gives her the option again. It's like you live or you die.
Yes.
And then he ignites the lightsaber again and it's red. And all of a sudden you see Anakin with his yucky Sith skin, just like Palps was after he got fried by Mace Windu for that lovely hot second in good old Chancellor Palpatine's office. You mean they're the same person? Darth Sidious and Chancellor Palpatine?
Wonder who could have called that.
Crazy. And then you had the Sith eyes, which I don't like seeing my dear Anakin. My dear little Annie with the Sith eyes. It breaks my heart every time because it just harkens back to Order 66 and the death of the Jedi Order, which, as you and I go over, every time they rehash Order 66, it hurts again and again and again.
I'm immune to it. I've seen it like 6 times. It's old hat. Oh, really? Watch this. Hold this beer. Execute Order 66. Hey, Cal, you're playing this new game? Yeah. Oh my god, there are clone troopers. Hey, dude, what are you doing? Oh, I'm gonna go train with my master. You better hurry up. You know, next time you could face off against me. High five me, little buddy. I'm gonna high five a clone trooper because you look cool. Yeah, no. This is a 20-minute sequence that happened throughout the entirety of the game. Maybe 30 minutes in total. And it was like, hey, in this 30 minutes, I'm gonna make you fall in love with the clones again.
Or, hey, Master Balaba. Is it Balaba? No. Balaba. Balaba. Kanan's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, I found our backup. Oh, nice work. Great job. You know, the Clone Force 99 is amazing. And then all of a sudden, you get one little transmission, and your master's screaming for you to run.
Run, get away,
and you wonder why all of these Jedi left have trauma. Especially the young ones. The childhood trauma. And so, going back to this fight with Ahsoka and Anakin, you know...
did like how he says it's time to go back to the beginning, and he kicks her out.
Yep.
Back into the world between worlds.
Yeah.
And it felt like, because originally when he's like, it's time to go back to the beginning, he kicks her, I was waiting for her to drop in to the first scene with them again, and be like, no, we're going to go back to the beginning. But I like how it was, we're going to go back to the beginning of the lesson as we started it.
Exactly. And, you know, as she gets kicked into the world between worlds, Anakin is transitioning back and forth between, you know, Anakin as a Sith, the newly crowned Darth Vader, into what he would become in the suit, which again was another beautifully done transition, which was very scary to see.
Yeah, every time like the light would flash and you'd see Vader, it was jarring. And
Vader's scary, man.
Vader is.
And they do a great job of showcasing how scary Vader is in any medium, especially the Rogue One hallway scene.
Oh yeah. I'm
terrifying.
gonna suffocate myself to be a little bit dramatic here.
Yeah. That scene absolutely did not need to be in that movie, but I'm so happy.
Oh wait, yeah, that didn't need to be here to tell this story, but damn,
yes, I need to see it.
We need to remind you, you are watching a Star Wars. There are evil space wizards with laser swords.
Yes, there are. And so it cuts back to Cetos, and you know, Carson's like, "What are we out? Like, what are we looking for?" And Huang drops the line of Jace has abilities, and then, as simply put, his father was Kanan Jarrus, a Jedi Knight. Which I'm so happy we finally got Kanan's name dropped throughout this entire thing. It only took 5 episodes.
But I mean, this was the first episode to also feature Jace. Like,
fair. Yeah.
The first episode we got is, I want to be a Jedi too. And you were like, if you know, then you're like, yeah, kid, I want you to be a Jedi too.
We're all rooting for you, buddy.
But everyone else is like, oh, he wants to be like Sabine, who... It's a great red herring from the episode, because it's like, Sabine can't do anything Ahsoka does, so what makes you think this kid can? Oh.
Yeah. And Carson has the same reaction that we do. And you can tell that he's been accustomed to being, if not directly around the Jedi, you know, we don't know a lot about his past during the Rebellion or even in the Clone Wars era. But he's old. You know, he's an old timer.
He's easily like, I would put him in like his 60s.
Yeah. Somewhere around that. Maybe 50s. Maybe.
He late 30s fighting Clone Wars.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. And he gets the mission at that point. He's like, okay,
yep, just accepts it. He's like, I know a thing or two because I've obviously probably seen a thing or two.
We are New Republic Rangers.
Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Oh, you know what we actually missed? Bum 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 ba-dum bum bum. Just speed it up a little bit.
And so, you know, Jason Chopper, hearing this entire fight go down, and Chopper detecting something somehow on his scopes of something's out in the water. So, the X-Wings and stuff, they're searching the blue, and it cuts back to Anakin and Ahsoka, who at this point, Anakin is wailing on her.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that's what Sith do. They channel their hatred and their anger and absolutely go ham.
I liked this fight because he did it a little bit at the beginning where he would do the flourishes and then he would cross blades, and then it would just be like I'm going to use a little bit of the force, I'm going to shove you back and show you how great this gap is. And I felt like Revenge of the Sith, the Anakin that Ahsoka fought in the beginning was, hey, this is tail end of episode 2, start of episode like Revenge of the Sith movie Anakin, and the other one is like, this is the absolute peak of me when I'm going toe to toe with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I am proving like I am
the best.
I am definitely a match for him.
Yoda who? Mace Windu who? It's Anakin.
I mean,
Anakin at the top of everybody.
Technically, I think he beat Mace Windu.
You're not going to call him on that technicality. I don't like Mace Windu for a lot of reasons. I don't like the Jedi management during the Clone Wars for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
I feel like they weren't great, but Mace got a raw deal. Okay.
Well, I mean, I am going to say that if you've ever played a first person shooter, you played anything where it's like Anakin did the damage. And, like, sure, he was defending against Sidious, but Sidious wasn't beating him. We could argue Sidious was letting Mace Windu do that to him because for the greater good, or his greater good.
Yeah.
But, like, Anakin did not just do, like, oh, I assisted, got 25 points. No, you got the kill. It was 75 points. He
didn't throw him out a window with Force lightning, though.
Yeah, but he took off the arm. He literally de-armed the man.
Well, I mean, it's better than
disarmed the man.
Beheading the man like he did the Dooku like 45 minutes before in that episode. It's probably more like an hour and a half. But anyway, and so, Ahsoka loses her lightsaber here, and a la what she did in Tales of the Jedi, defeating an opponent without her lightsaber present, manages to somehow wrestle Anakin's lightsaber from him, and
she arm bars him and takes it away. Yeah,
which she's really good at that, by the way. That is an underrated Ahsoka move, and I'm willing to bet that we see it again before the series is over. Her desabering somebody,
Balin, yeah, probably,
yeah, and there's this moment where she's holding Anakin's lightsaber up to him, and you can see the red flash in Ahsoka's eyes, and I thought it was almost like she was giving into the dark side right then and
like
there.
She was going like, I could be as bad as you.
Yeah.
And I like how it was still a reverse grip. Like, she disarmed him, but she didn't change it to hold it different. She was like, no, this is the reverse grip you would have known in this Clone Wars.
Yep. But instead, throws the lightsaber down into the world between somewhere in space. There it goes. Which I thought was very smart. Because he's not going to go grab that,
I'm telling you, I would love for the outtake to be where she throws it and he just holds out his hand and catches it in the other hand and puts it on his belt. I would have loved that to have been the outtake.
And she very powerfully says, "I choose to live." And you can see Anakin all in a hot mess, huffing, he's puffing, he's gonna blow the place down. But
he's a little ashy.
Yeah. But you can see him stop, focus himself, and then we're back to light side Anakin. And he's like, there's hope for you yet. And the camera pans around Ahsoka, and then there goes Anakin. He's gone.
Well, she hears something. He goes, it's like, even like our time is done. He goes, like, your friends are looking for you. He says something, and you start to hear ships.
Yeah.
And yeah, then it does the classic pan around, and then he's gone, and Ahsoka's left
to sink in some water.
It was so that was totally your baptism scene.
Yeah, it was
But she the water comes back up around her, and then you see her floating there. So that's my she died, and that is her, like, she might have gone under a couple times, but I'm like, you weren't. Like Anakin was keeping you alive. Your body was doing its natural thing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about real quick the conversation between Jace, Hera, and Chopper when they're like, Jace is like, Carson's like, go, we're running low on fuel reserves, and
We've done this circuit a million times. Nothing's out here.
and Hera's like, widen your search. And Huang's like she also missed a Huang, like, this is not a real thing. Blah 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 blah. But then Jace goes, hey mom, like, it's still out there. Chopper picked up something on his thing. And she goes, okay, and gives her the course heading, and then goes, oh, and Chopper says you need to get low. How low? How low? He says low, like, really, and you can hear it all. And I'm like,
No.
that was a Jon Favreau. Like, if I had to be
like a Jon Favreau moment.
like, he wrote that dialogue, and everything else was very meaningful, very impactful. That was the most real, the best dialogue of that.
I thought it was
episode.
also just very Rebels
Yes.
heavy right there. That's a scene that you would just take out of Rebels.
You could have animated that and been like, oh yeah, I know exactly what we're doing.
And I also just, side note, I hope some very talented animators are out there and will put some of these scenes into the Clone Wars Rebels animation style.
Oh, I bet that'll happen.
Yeah, because there's been a guy working on YouTube for the past, he's been at this for like over a year at least, where he is animating the Revenge of the Sith duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin in the Clone Wars art style.
That's really cool.
Oh, it's so cool. And he's still working on it. Really beautiful, really awesome. And yeah, that's also where Huang drops the line. Hera's asking, like what Ahsoka's master was like. Almost kind of seemed like she was kind of making conversation while they were
flying. Yeah. Like, I'm in this with this random droid. Like, might as well.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what was Ahsoka's master like? Huang's just like pauses and he's like, intense. He's like, yeah.
That's a good way to describe Anakin.
It's a great way to describe Anakin. That man did not have a single relaxed moment.
We saw Tales of the Jedi. We know how he trained to survive Order 66. I just think he was a little selective with his training of who got to survive Order 66.
A little bit. And so, they locate Ahsoka, who's just floating in the ocean of Cetos.
Mm-hmm.
Just floating there. Little swim. And they get the Ghost real low. The X-Wing pilots are hoisting her up. And I thought it was a really beautiful scene where she's in and out of consciousness, laying on the ramp of the Ghost, and she's just like, Anakin.
Yeah.
And, definitely what you would hear as you're coming down off of a Force vision.
Like someone like why'd you call out that person's name? They've been dead for years. Oh, but they're the reason I wasn't here. And I know before we go back to that, and we kind of lose Anakin to the ether because he's no longer in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guy from work who was like, I didn't like that Anakin went back to like, he's like he should stay Darth Vader. I'm like, but that's not how
Anakin's story ends.
Yeah, he ends as Anakin Skywalker, not Darth Vader. And yeah, that's a strong word, but we're close. He tried.
Hey, he's done a lot of bad things, but at the core of Anakin Skywalker, he's good. And I actually wanted to reference, there was a book that was released I think it was last month, celebrating 40 years of Return of the Jedi, and it's a collection of short stories from a whole bunch of different authors. And one of the stories that's told in this book is from the author of a book called Brotherhood, which details Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship during Anakin's Padawan days.
Mm-hmm.
A really beautiful book. Great read. One of the newer entries into like the official canon. And this short story in this book details Anakin as he is passing away on the Death Star. And it's his spirit essentially about to submit to the will of the Force. But in true Anakin fashion, his spirit doesn't submit to the Force, because when you're the chosen one and you're as boneheaded as Anakin, that's just not what you do. And essentially how the story goes is that he senses a flame within himself, and he's shrouded in darkness. And instead of submitting to the Force, he follows this flame until suddenly he hears Obi-Wan's voice. And him and Obi-Wan have a great heart-to-heart, beautifully done. And it's telling the story of essentially how he became a Force ghost in Return of the Jedi. And in this story, he's questioning why he's in the standard Jedi robes, the tan and brown ones.
Because you never see him in that.
No, because he always has the stylings of black with him,
which even Dooku did when we watched Tales of
yeah,
Jedi.
Dooku was real popular with the style.
It was definitely like more Jedi reserved.
Yes,
but it was still like that's not.
It's frowned upon.
Those are not Jedi robes.
You're allowed to pick your clothing in the Jedi Order. They just frown upon using the darker colors for obvious reasons.
I just blood, man.
Yeah. Foreshadowing. Anakin's appearance was foreshadowing the entire time. And Obi-Wan's like, well, the robes chose you. And this was the Force's way of looking into Anakin, sensing the good in him, and then deciding that he is good. Like he redeemed himself at the end of Return of the Jedi for all the faults, for all the bad things that he did. At the end, he still chose the light. He did it for himself. He did it for his son.
Every single one of his motivations has been out of love and compassion.
Yes. For better or worse.
For better or worse. Like, some were good choices. Like, I became a Jedi to go back and save my mom and free the slaves because that's the right thing to do. I love my wife. I will do anything to make sure I found out my wife is going to die and I have a chance to save her. I am going to take it. Consequences be damned. Oh, those are the consequences. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to save my son. Consequences be damned.
Yeah. And so, to your friend at work, I hope you listen to this. It's actually a perfect send-off for Anakin.
Yeah.
I'd love to just get a series of Force Ghost Anakin just
sit on the couch, maybe talking to Qui-Gon Jinn.
Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Eating some terrible drinking.
They do laps on Anakin in that show. There's a really funny deep fake guy on YouTube, and he has the characters watching in the movies
and the show and everything,
and the shows and everything, and reacting to it. And Anakin gets made the most fun of, but also there's Qui-Gon, who is just like, oh, so every person can just survive a gut shot except for me.
It took you forever to master that floating pair, but once I did, and he's like, oh, that's a Force move.
And I was checking, as we were going through this entire scene, I kept like rigorously checking the amount of time left in this episode because I thought we were just going to end right there.
Yeah,
it felt like we were going to end right there, but no. Ahsoka ends up waking up in the Jedi Star Cruiser, and it threw me for a second when she didn't have her like headpiece on.
Yeah,
I was like, whoa, why does she look so different? I was like, oh wait, no, it's she's not dressed.
Yeah, we gotta change her.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see that. But Huang's welcoming her back, and she seems surprised that Hera's there with Jace in a Squadron X-Wings, and then she's like, whoa, well, what about Sabine? And then Huang's like, in the tried and true, oh, I thought she was with you.
I thought I told you to stick together. Almost like I told you to stick together. Not that I've been around for 27,000 years and I know how these things go.
Yeah, but maybe listen to the old droid. Just once or twice. They did start out together. Fair. Truth. And in their defense.
But the first chance they had to split, we should split up. All right.
Yep. Okay.
All right, Fred. Split up.
Every horror movie advice ever. We should split up. No! Anyway. And so, we get back to I guess we can call it an altar. No.
Yeah, no, altar's pretty good. Altar's
yeah.
good.
The Night Sister.
Altar, yeah.
Yeah.
Stargate.
And I love, you have opinions on this, but I love how Ahsoka does have the ability to, a Force Echo to
sense to
sense like memories of like what had happened here. Really cool to do. And I also love the fact that, Jace gets a moment to talk with Ahsoka, and is like, I heard you fighting somebody with lightsabers. Who are you fighting? And Ahsoka's just sitting there, like, for a moment, like,
that was a personal fight, dude.
yeah, like, you heard what? and then Hera comes in, and it's like, Huang, why don't you show Jace like a starship? And he's like, I've been in a starship, Mom. And then Ahsoka's like, a Jedi starship?
I'll show you the training room.
Yeah.
You have a training room? Can you teach me how to... What was it? Can you teach me how to use the Force? No. Do you know about lightsabers? Yes. Can you teach me how to build one?
No. You can tell that, granted, I guess this was Huang's job back in the Order. It's like he got stuck with all the lovely younglings with 1.5 million questions. You can tell this is not his first rodeo. And so Ahsoka's sensing the entirety of what happened after she fell off that cliff and died. And she senses that Sabine, I wouldn't say Sabine was seduced to the dark side, because Balin made a great argument.
Yeah.
I'm not your enemy. We have the same goals. You want to find your friend. I'm here to serve a greater good, whatever that may be.
Yep.
Still on the fence about what he actually wants. And, it's like, come with me willingly, and, I won't make the same mistakes that your master did.
On my honor, no harm will come to you.
Yeah, no harm will come to you. And I would have done the same thing as Sabine in the face of that. You've lost so much. You've lost your family. You've lost Ezra. Everything since the end of the Empire. Sure, everybody, and we made this discussion, I think, in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody celebrated the end of the Empire in the birth of the New Republic. But for Sabine, this whole thing's never been over.
Yeah.
And it had to hurt 1,000,000 times worse, knowing that she was training with Ahsoka to try to be a Jedi, and meanwhile she couldn't go to Mandalore to save her family. Like, that's gutting.
Yeah.
And so you have a chance to find the only person who's really felt like family throughout this entire thing. I'm going to take that.
I'd take
chance. Yeah. And Carson lands yet again. It's like, hey, we have a problem. The fleet's coming. Like, what do you mean the fleet's coming? And it's like, yeah, and I don't think they're here to help.
Mm-hmm.
And Ahsoka and Hera are like, great.
Yeah, fleet.
And so, Ahsoka's trying to figure out how to find Sabine, and Hera and Carson are hatching a plan to delay the fleet until they can come up with a plan to find Sabine. And then Ahsoka looks up, and you hear everybody's favorite space whales in the atmosphere. Chris's impression of the squale, everybody.
It's my squale cough. SSQUHALES. Squales.
It breaks my brain every time you try to spell squales. Like, you start off, and my brain immediately hits like the DSL dial-up tone in my brain. What is going on?
Mrs. Play has said we could do shirts.
we should do shirts.
Save the squales.
And oh god, those would be beautiful. I'm gonna do a mock-up of those. And I called it. I will say I did call this in a conversation with my friend at work, who also religiously follows Star Wars, her and her husband. And I made the joke last week. I'm like, oh, Hera's gonna get to the other galaxy by just hopping on a
Sabine will.
No,
I'm
Sabine.
Sorry. Ahsoka will, not Hera.
I originally thought that Ahsoka was gonna get there in the world between worlds somehow, like get pushed through a portal.
That's right. We did. Yeah. It was gonna be like in a portal.
But I was thinking that maybe Hera would like attach onto the side of like a of a Purgle. But Ahsoka had a better idea. And they're trying to figure out how to delay the fleet. And Ahsoka comes into the Ghost and it's like, "Hey, I know how to follow Sabine." And you get the shot of the X-wings going one way and the Jedi Star Cruiser and the Ghost going another way. Which originally I thought maybe Hera was going to go with her for this whole thing, but
her excuse was decent parenting.
after you took your kid into an active war zone.
It was a dueling ground.
I don't think it was a dueling ground in space, but okay.
Okay. Fair.
And so, they're talking about the plan, and Hera's like, I don't like this plan. And Huyang's like, I really don't like this plan.
And Ahsoka's like, get me to a whale. Force snoot boop.
Yep.
Force. I did it to a saber-toothed cat in Tales of Jedi, and they fly up there, and Ahsoka, like, they look for the biggest one they can find, probably the pack leader.
Yeah.
And they
Papa.
park
The
right
Papa
in front of it. And he was, when you see him compared to all the other ones,
Oh, that dude beefy.
like, how long you have? How many generations of these are like your like great grandkids?
What is the average age of a Purgle? That's a real question.
I imagine that they'd kind of be like the whales on our planet, where like I could see it being like the equivalent to
Living like
70 to 80 years, but just put that on a scale of galactic.
I don't know about that. I think that maybe, because they're mentioned in ancient text, and like this is how the earliest hyperspace lanes became feasible, because they were, studying the migration of Purgle.
Mhm.
But they're very rarely seen in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Ezra's seen them, the Rebels crew's seen them, Ahsoka's seen them. But a lot of people, like, they're not seen on a daily basis. Like, they're made up in like myths and stories. But even Hera and Sabine said the same thing, is that they hadn't seen a Purgle since the last time they saw Ezra. So, they're not out here being social.
Have you ever seen a whale?
No.
You want to know why that is?
Why?
Because we probably hunted most of them down.
Well.
And so for like we.
Well then.
Yeah. No. And I like, to your point there, like, beautifully brought up, where you go, we've heard about them in stories, and we got that in The Last Jedi, where Luke goes, I was a legend. I was Luke Skywalker, defeater of the Empire. And we get that now. Mom, it's just like you said, Jace to Hera. The whales came, and Ezra used them to take away the bad guys.
Yeah. Him and the bad guys.
Yeah. And it's like, oh no, he did the Hobbit thing and took Sauron away. Like, but it was like, oh yeah, no, this is it, and it sounds, when you think about it, like squale joke aside, hey, these mythical space creatures that, by the way, we didn't know existed until we found them one day on an asteroid. Yeah, so when we were all under attack, this is after your dad died, there was another great Jedi with us, and he used them and took all the bad guys away. Like, that sounds like, if you were to say that to me, I'd be like, okay, that's the story that you're going to give like a toddler.
Yep, kind of crazy.
But no, no, that's the story. That is the. They didn't go to a farm. Like, nope, that's what happened.
That is the ending of Star Wars Rebels, everybody.
Yeah,
which sounds crazy. Just, you're right, because it does sound like a little, like a child's tale. And at the same time, Carson and his X-wing compadres go up to the fleet that has just dropped out of hyperspace, and does his best Poe Dameron, before Poe Dameron did it himself, impression. And he's like, oh, this is Carson Teva of Adelphi Base. Please identify yourself. And, Fleet Admiral, who I don't think was ever named, but...
Oh, she was named, but it doesn't matter.
And she's like, you know who we are. You know why we're here. Like, we don't have to do this.
I got to check with the general on that one.
Yeah.
Cat, like, it felt like...
He's like, please just identify yourself, though, please.
And I was waiting for... I'm like, hi. I was waiting for him to try to, like, keep repeating himself.
Yeah. and the Fleet Admiral at this point is like, maybe we can help. Just tell us what this mission is, and like, we can help. Which is exactly what authority says before they try to shut you down when you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. So hats off to him for not giving into that one, because we've seen that one play out before. And
Execute Order 66.
And eventually, the Admiral gets to the end of a rope, and she's like, hey, court martial, your rank's gone. You're never doing this again, buddy. It's over.
Kiss your retirement goodbye.
Yeah, brings the hammer on him. And Carson smartly is like, okay, let's just calm down. I'll tell you. but you might not believe it. It's gonna sound a little out there. I wish we really could have been honed in for that part of the conversation, though.
Yeah.
Because it cuts back after Ahsoka and Huyang like make contact with this giant Purgle, and you can see the Admiral like sitting in her chair, kind of stumped as to what she's being told right now, and she's like, "They're doing what?
Yeah, they're getting on space whales to
Go to another galaxy." And it's like a whole "you need to see it to believe it" kind of deal. And then that's when Ahsoka's and her pack of Purgle are coming out of the atmosphere, and Carson's like, "Yeah, you might want to," or no, Hera chimes in finally. It's like, "You might want to take evasive maneuvers because they're giant whales.
You might want to get out of the pod's way."
Yeah, just maybe." And it also had one of the most telling scenes of how Ahsoka has kind of put the trauma behind her. Is Huyang's like, "Are you sure this is how we're going to find Ezra?" And Ahsoka's like, "Oh no,
No,
not at all. I have no idea what's going to happen."
but it's better than staying here.
And it's exactly what Anakin was telling her. It's like, you either fight or in this case it's fighting, meaning you have to keep going. You can't stall or you're done for. Like if you stay in the same place, like you're just going to die. Like you have to keep trying new things, going places, meeting people, doing the do, not the
The MTN do.
yes.
I get you. No, you have fighting, because Balin was like, it was just one of combat and fighting, and when Ahsoka ignited her lightsaber, how inevitable. Like, he made fighting seem so
Not required.
horrible. And that's simply what it is. It's like, oh, you shouldn't fight. Like, violence isn't the answer, but fighting isn't necessarily violent. It's hey, how's the patient doing? Like, they've got some horrible cancer, but they're fighting. They're hanging in there. They're doing everything they can. Hey, you did a really good job test. You really fought for that grade. You really did everything you could. And it can be persuasive. It can be any. But the whole point is, you got to keep moving.
Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming. Like, put one foot in front of the other. Don't forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right from your left. And that's all Anakin was trying to get across was, you are so hung up in who taught you, what I became, the mistake that, like, you walking away, which that's not your fault. You walking away isn't your fault.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to me? Once again, part of the lesson, not your fault.
Yeah.
What is your fault is walking away from Sabine.
Yep.
You need to put that behind you and keep moving forward, and that's where you'll succeed, because you're more than I am. You're more than this.
Getting goosebumps.
I go. Oh, I love me some teaching exposition. And yeah.
And this is where her transition is complete. And again, this is a certifiable, you called this moment. This episode was Ahsoka the Gray turning into Ahsoka the White. And it was, I mean, even in her stylistic choices of clothing, she literally is wearing lighter clothing now.
Yes.
So, it's Ahsoka the Gray into literally Ahsoka the White. So,
and it looked a little bit more cozy too.
Oh, it looks so cozy.
That shawl thingy, that poncho,
Yeah, the outfit choices in this.
Yeah, they look a little cozy.
Beautiful. But yeah, so I also always love seeing Purgle like jump into hyperspace.
Yeah,
and the sound they make as they're like revving up.
I like the fact that it feels like, because it's like, oh, it's so silly when they go into. I'm like, no. Well, have you ever seen?
Oh, that's so cool. What do you mean?
But it's like, but they're away. I'm like, have you ever seen things from the deep dark ocean? Like when they have bioluminescence and like they start float. Like it's like, oh, they're doing. Nope, actually, completely plausible.
There's a lot of whack stuff in the bottom of the ocean, by the way, but that's another podcast we need to jump on.
But I thought the Purgle, like, you're right, when they the eyes, how they quickly. And then they it like goes all the way through them, and then like the tail fans out. And
this really jumps into one of my favorite. Really jumps into one of my favorite parts of Star Wars is that there's this insanely large galaxy with so many possibilities out there. And it almost feels like you're on the open sea in like the 1500s, and there's like all these pirate stories about like like a giant kraken, or like the lost city of Atlantis, or all of these
The mermaids, the Sirens Call,
yeah, basically anything that's in like the Odyssey
Treasure
is
Island.
yeah. And so like that's I love aspects like that. Like there are giant space whales out there.
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
just genuinely really cool.
And so yeah, then they jump and the episode ends. And something I need to mention about this episode too that really sent me was the score was beautiful.
Yeah,
Kevin Kiner, who he scored the Clone Wars, he scored the Bad Batch, Rebels. He's done all the
did
animated.
he do Mandalorian?
No, I don't think he did.
Okay.
No, that was I'm blanking on his name, but he
The stinger for the Mandalorian always gets me.
yeah. But this score, I mean, it was beautifully done.
Mm-hmm.
It was Kevin Kiner was in his bag. I can't wait for it to come out like officially because I'm going to listen to it and probably cry.
Probably, yeah. And I think the other really important part of that is like I said, this was Empire Strikes Back. It was the final words was Ahsoka going, "I'll find them, Hera," and then it was, "May the Force be with you." And they jump. But if that would have been a movie and you ended it there, you'd be like, okay, we're gonna get a sequel. It's not a cliffhanger.
Nope.
Like that story came in, told, and wrapped up. We got character growth and development. We got exposition passed, and then hey, where could we go with this?
And I hate that we only have 3 episodes left of this.
It
makes me. I'm a little sad.
I'm betting we'll get one more season of Ahsoka. They'll tell the other stories that they need to tell, and then it'll be the final movie.
Yeah, I'm hoping because a second season hasn't been confirmed yet. But I was really trying to think about what's coming next, Star Wars project wise. I was blanking because I don't think we're getting anything until next year. But I did just realize that the next phase of the High Republic is kicking off in October, so it makes sense that Ahsoka is ending right as the new line of the books come in. So, but yeah, all in all, this was a beautifully done episode. I had tears through a lot of it too. Just you watch an animated show like the Clone Wars, and in my case, I was still growing up during this. I was 11 when the Clone Wars movie came up. So I literally, as I'm getting older, I'm watching the Clone Wars progress, and Ahsoka's developing and becoming this, from this very annoying runt of a kid to this beautifully done Padawan into. She was basically a Jedi Knight. Let's not. She left the Order. She was a Knight.
She was a Knight. Yeah.
And now I guess you can call her a Jedi Knight because
Anakin completed the training.
Yeah. Didn't even think about that.
The other thing, actually, the one thing I was thinking, and she completed Anakin's training, but I think completing this training was also seeing the dark side of what she could be. So not only was it Anakin doing that, but it was also, here's your trial of the Jedi, kind of like when the Grand Inquisitor did it for Kanan.
Yes, in Rebels, which also was really cool.
Which was really cool because it was the last formal Jedi that he would have a chance to talk to.
And I just want to drop a bombshell because there are people in the Star Wars universe, in the fandom, that don't like Rebels simply because of the style of art, because it differs from Clone Wars. Star Wars Rebels has some of the highest and most incredible moments that I've ever seen a show have, let alone in the Star Wars universe. The highs of Rebels, once you get past the fact that it's made for just like a slightly younger audience than the war crimes that were Star Wars: The Clone Wars, it's their highs of Star Wars Rebels were incredible.
Yeah.
And there are moments that every time I go back to rewatch Star Wars Rebels just gut me. And I'm not going to mention those because I don't want to cry on the podcast. But, you just talk about what happened to Jason's father and it just gets me every time. So go watch Star Wars Rebels if you haven't.
Yeah.
Ahsoka gives you the perfect reason to.
To Rebels' credit, it feels very much like Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like the first episode, it's like, here's this kid show, and Mark Hamill's going like, it'll never last, it's too smart. you know what? You're gonna get 4 whole seasons, Mark. Keep being Ozai. But yeah, so great episode. And next season or next week will be episode 6.
5 but 6.
5 but 6 for us. So to let you guys know, it will also come out Thursday, probably pretty late because work is dumb.
That it is.
But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Check out our new channel art. We got some really awesome, new, cool channel art. An amazing artist did a really good update for us, and I'm
a Jedi.
You are a Jedi, and it's getting fixed on our banner. She's working on our banner to make it fit on YouTube, so we'll be able to see your Lego Jedi-ness. Remember that you're all winners out there. Take care of your friends here and elsewhere. Keep it weird, and have a fantastic rest of your day, everybody.